Guys, the French government has just officially collapsed, and now the country is on the brink of nationwide protests. In fact, the French population is so frustrated with the government's instability and negligence that they are now planning massive shutdowns with the aim to halt the country's entire economy for a day, saying, "Let's block everything." You see, last night was unbelievable. France kicked out the country's fourth prime minister in just 12 months, leading people to describe the country as ungovernable. That is a wild sentence right there. And now, without a prime minister, the government has ground to a halt, forcing the president, Emmanuel Macron, to find yet another replacement. And now, considering the situation, there are also growing calls for President Macron himself to be removed, and his critics are saying that he is clinging on to power and he is unable to govern effectively. And honestly, tomorrow's planned strikes could be a breaking point in this.
France has just dropped a budget bombshell, soaring deficit, massive debt, and warning of financial instability. Some are even asking, is France on the path to bankruptcy? And if the Eurozone's second largest economy is in trouble, what does that mean for the rest of Europe? Let's break it down. Watch and pay attention, and I will share my thoughts later.
France is now ungovernable. You better believe it. France is now ungovernable. The country that actually made its money from bleeding black people, the country that forced Haiti to pay 150 billion for their freedom. And one of the reasons why Haiti is still in the situation it is right now is because of France. France, the country that bled Africa, making sure that the countries that it colonized basically had to pay a colonial tax for being colonized. That country, you know, the country that one of the biggest slave traders in the world, that country has run out of money. They cannot afford to pay the pensions. They cannot afford the healthcare system. Literally, France is literally on the verge of economic collapse. And this is serious. France is in worse trouble than Greece was, except at the time the European Union was so powerful at the time. But now the European Union was weakened by Brexit. The European Union has been weakened by Trump turning against them. So now the European Union, they're just running around like headless chickens. They cannot even bail France out. France is literally on the verge of collapse. And coming close after France is going to be the UK and Germany.
So the French government has fallen again, but international news media is going to be very shy about telling us the real reason why it's fallen, the economic reasons why it's fallen. On his way out, the ousted Prime Minister, Mr. Francois, said, "You might kick me out, you might remove me, but that does not change the economic problems for the country." I'm paraphrasing. The real reason why France has failed as a government is because Africa has taken its power back. Ever since the country of Niger, in the Sahel, in Central West Africa, decided to nationalize its uranium, France has never been the same again. This uranium that state-owned companies like Orano, French-owned companies like Orano had been siphoning, stealing under the previous government, today, Niger turned off the faucet. Niger said no more. So Niger, under the new governance of President Tiani, is nationalizing its uranium. This uranium France was stealing not only to light its beautiful cities like Paris and Nice, it was also using it to run its electrical manufacturing and industries. All of these are processing and running their nuclear reactors on top of it all. So these things that are the foundations of an economy, like manufacturing and processing, right now that the electricity in France, their energy is not safe. They do not have a reliable place to get their energy from. This is why they're suffering. But it's not going to be told that way on international news media. You're only going to hear it from people like me and others who are truth tellers. So yeah, this is why. This is what happens. This is proof that African leaders are in service of either them or us.
Réveille-toi, le pouvoir est à toi. Français, réveille-toi, le pouvoir est à toi.
So France is broke because African countries have kicked them out and they don't allow them to exploit them anymore. And as you saw, there's a big rally in the country. They're protesting the president, Macron. They want him out. Yesterday, they voted out the prime minister, which was the third prime minister in 14 months. He got a vote of no confidence, the same last three, because the last three prime ministers cannot present a bill or cannot present a plan on how to revitalize the French economy. Now, the only way to present a plan to revitalize the French economy is by re-enslaving or re-exploiting African countries. And Russia is helping African countries. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, they're building nuclear plants. Like, it's helping African countries. That's Russia's plan of fucking up the West. So the West is using a proxy war to destroy Russia. Russia is deciding, okay, I'm going to take away your means of living. So Russia has been saving African countries from France, and they have a planned demonstration tomorrow, the 10th, Wednesday. The whole nation is going to have this massive demonstration tomorrow in protest of Macron. But yeah, France is broke, and everything they're doing right now, a lot of the French understand it, but majority of the masses don't. Everything they're doing right now, nothing can be done. The only way France goes back to where it used to be is to find new countries to exploit for resources. That's it. France has nothing. They have nothing. England is next. Oh, I also forgot to add, this is why France has been pushing for a war with Russia. France has gotten 26 countries right now to agree to invade, to go into Ukraine, which is going to be a violation, which will force a war with Russia. The reason France wants this is if it does that, then Russia is now faced with more problems, more wars. Then it takes away some of its resources from Africa. It creates new chaos, and then France uses that as an opportunity to go back into Africa and then find new countries to exploit. The only way France can survive is exploitation. So they need war right now to make that exploitation happen.
If you're in France today, don't expect it to be a journée habituelle. Is it because the government just collapsed? Partly. But there's also a viral grassroots campaign called Bloquons Tout that's calling for a day of nationwide civil disobedience. What kind? Blocking train stations, picketing oil refineries, targeting transport, schools, public institutions, and logistics hubs. So what are people mad about? Well, it used to be about the budget that soon-to-be former Prime Minister François Bayrou proposed. That included scrapping 2 national holidays, freezing pensions, and cutting 5 billion euros from health spending. That's off the table now, but people still want fiscal policy reform and better living standards. But wait, isn't this just like the
Les Gilets jaunes.
The yellow vests.
Not exactly. In case you missed it, the Gilets jaunes was a grassroots protest movement in late 2018 that started from a fuel tax hike but quickly erupted into nationwide demonstrations against inequality. The Gilets jaunes came largely from rural France, while Bloquons Tout heavily skews towards the younger, more educated, and politically engaged people from the left. How left? Pretty left. Many of them support Jean-Luc Mélenchon, de facto leader of La France Insoumise. With the government's implosion, France is now in hot water. Will the Bloquons Tout changer?
Clashes between the police and the French have broken out in the streets of Paris. Videos emerging from Gare Nord show police in riot gear in clashes, and sometimes they were videoed being violent to the protesters. Now the protesters have come out in full swing because they are protesting the dire economic situation that is in France. Now, the French government collapsed a couple of days ago, and the French government have not been honest with the French. They haven't come out and said that the reason that the French have basically become bankrupt is because they can no longer steal money from Africa, because Africans have kicked them out. So it is impossible to look at their populations in the face and say, all the money that we had, we were stealing it from Africa, and now the Africans have kicked us out. We've got nowhere else to get the money from. And hence, the chaos continues because the French are so puzzled. They don't understand why their country has no money, why they've got no money for infrastructure, no money for resources, no money for pensions. But the government cannot tell them in the face that for all these years, they have been sustained by money that was stolen from Africans who were literally starving whilst they were enjoying the African money.
Breaking update. France's government is on the verge of collapse and the crisis is shaking Europe to its core. The country is drowning in debt, with a staggering 3.34 trillion euro deficit that grows by nearly 5,000 euro every single second. And it's not just France, the United Kingdom is also staring down the same path. Here's the part most people don't know. For decades, 14 African nations were forced into an arrangement that sent up to 80% of their yearly revenues straight to France. That deal kept France afloat for over 50 years. But times have changed. Countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, and Senegal have expelled France, cutting off Paris from the very resources that kept its economy stable. Now, the fallout is massive. Companies are leaving France, unemployment is rising, and the state can't keep up with the weight of its own debt. The lifeline from Africa is gone, and with it, France's economic safety net. Meanwhile, the UK still leans heavily on Nigeria, but analysts warn that if Nigeria follows the same path and pushes back, Britain could face a collapse similar to France. What we're seeing right now is Europe paying the price for decades of dependency on Africa. The old system is crumbling and the cracks are finally out in the open. So here's the big question. Is this the beginning of Europe's economic downfall? Or can these nations survive without Africa's resources?
Questo è un bambino che lavora in una miniera d'oro in Burkina Faso. Il Burkina Faso è una delle nazioni più povere del mondo. Per il Burkina Faso, che ha l'oro, la Francia stampa moneta coloniale. In cambio pretende che finiscano nelle casse del tesoro francese il 50% di tutto quello che il Burkina Faso esporta. L'oro che questo bambino si infila in un cunicolo per tirare fuori finisce per lo più nelle casse dello Stato francese. Allora la soluzione non è prendere gli africani e spostarli in Europa, la soluzione è liberare l'Africa da certi europei che la sfruttano e consentire a queste persone di vivere di quello che hanno.
Emmanuel Macron ci ha definiti vomitevoli, cinici, irresponsabili, e qui la stampa italiana a dire hai visto che ha detto Macron, che siamo irresponsabili. Vergogna. Irresponsabile Emmanuel Macron sono quelli che hanno bombardato la Libia perché gli dava fastidio che l'Italia avesse un rapporto privilegiato in campo energetico con Gheddafi, esponendoci al caos migrazione nel quale ci troviamo. Cinici Emmanuel Macron sono i francesi che mandano la gendarmerie a rispedire indietro qualunque immigrato tenti di passare il confine a Ventimiglia. Ma soprattutto, perché le cose vanno raccontate come si deve, vomitevole è chi... Buono, che lo vuoi tu? Ci hai mai tolto il pathos? Vomitevole è chi, come la Francia, continua a sfruttare l'Africa stampando moneta per 14 nazioni africane sulle quali applica il signoraggio, facendo lavorare bambini nelle miniere, estraendo materie prime come accade in Niger, dove la Francia estrae il 30% dell'uranio che gli serve a far camminare le centrali nucleari e il 90% dei nigerini vive senza elettricità. Non ci venire a fare lezioni, Macron, perché l'Africa scappa da voi e la soluzione non è spostare gli africani in Europa, è liberare l'Africa da certi europei. Non accettiamo lezioni.
France is facing a major fiscal crisis. Its debt now stands at over 110% of GDP, one of the highest in Europe. The government deficit has blown past EU limits, forcing emergency cuts and tax debate. The French economy, once considered Europe's backbone, is struggling with weak growth, high unemployment, and ballooning welfare costs. The result, a financial time bomb that should shake the entire Eurozone. This is not just about France. As the second largest economy in the EU after Germany, France plays a critical role in keeping the Eurozone stable. If France stumbles, the ripple effect could hit Italy, Spain, and even Germany. Bond markets are already watching closely. Higher French borrowing costs could spread across Europe, raising the risks of a wider debt crisis. Europe has been here before. The Eurozone debt crisis of the early 2010s nearly tore the EU apart, with bailout for Greece, Portugal, and Ireland. Back then, France was a stabilizer. Now it risks becoming part of the problem. with rising global interest rates, slowing economics, and the cost of energy, defense, and climate transition, Europe faces an economic storm. France's budget bombshell is the loudest warning yet. Technically, countries like France cannot go bankrupt the way a business can, but they can default on debt, lose investors' confidence, or be forced into harsh austerity measures. And that is the fear that France could slide into a financial trap where rising debt and weak growth feed off each other, dragging Europe into a new crisis. President Emmanuel Macron faces a tough choice: cut spending and risk social unrest, or keep borrowing and risk a market meltdown. Meanwhile, the European Central Bank and EU leaders are under pressure. Do they enforce strict rules on deficits or bend the rules for France? Either way, this moment is a wake-up call. Europe cannot ignore its growing debt crisis forever. France's budget shock is not just a French problem, it is a European problem, and if Europe does not act, today's budget bombshell could become tomorrow's financial earthquake. What do you think? Can France and the EU avoid another debt crisis? Share your thoughts in the comment box.